generally saying 9 means that it's also carrying a 7 with us, right? So G minor 9, G minor 7 with a 9 on top. G minor flat 9, G minor 7 with a flat 9. Let's do major. E major 9 is an E major 7 with a 9 on top. That also goes same exact thing for 13. 13 also bears the weight of the 7. Sometimes they say that it also bears the weight of the 9, right? It depends who you're talking to. That's a lot of notes for a guitar, but generally, like if you were like an organ player, if you had a G13, it's definitely a G7 with a 6 or a 13 on top, or, well, it doesn't have to be on top, but it could also have a 9 in there, okay? Or an 11. This is where it gets a little bit tricky, all right? So all the 9s, all the 13s, where it gets a little tricky is the 11 can be a little bit elusive, where we sort of mark the 11. G7, 11. G7, add multiple ways to notate it, but sometimes that 11 does still come with a 7 marked, okay? So that's going to be your only exception. So, however it is that you really want to think that, but it'll never say like E7, but it's actually an E minor with a, no, it's always how that's marked. Major 7, major 9, major whatever, minor 9, however minor flat 9. Now, where it gets a little bit tricky is when we get into the 2s like you were talking about. And let's say a 4. Yeah, you can have a chord with an add 2, right? There's two ways to think about it, right? If you have a C with an add 2 or a C add 9, right, is generally how it's written a little bit more. The reason that is a C add 9 is because it's just a C chord with an add 9. I'd rather it be more commonly known as an add 2 because the 9 we don't have a 7 in there, right? So that gets a little confusing. It's just a C chord with an add of a 9 or an add of a 2. Now, this is where the suspendeds get a little bit tricky. Same thing if I have a C add, C add 4, whatever, if I wanted to do somehow play that. And you just bring those two down to the 5th and 4th string. Because that D right there is your 2, your 9, your add. Now, this is where the theory starts getting a little bit more intense. That's an add 2 or an add 9. The reason that people call it more so an add 9, not a 9, because it doesn't bear the weight of the 7, so it's not just a C9, it's a C add 9. The reason it's not generally called the add 2 is because the 2 and the 4 tend to be suspended. Now, the reason it's a C add 9 is because we have a full C chord with that D on top, right? The reason it's not a C9 is because we don't have a 7, so that 9 doesn't bear the weight of the 7, so it has to be an add. That's why the add's in there. But the reason it's not a suspended second and suspended 4s don't have a 3 in the chord. So if you have a C chord, but there's no 3 in it, right? And then that 2 or that 4, which are on either side of your 3rd, eventually move to the 3rd. That's the suspended. So like one of the most common ones is if I have a G, and then I go play this D chord, but I keep my pinky down, that's a D suspended 4 because there is no 3rd. There's no F sharp in this chord, but it's suspended over from the G chord and then eventually makes its way to the F sharp to give me an actual full D chord. So a suspended can't have a 3rd in it. Does that all make sense? Is that all too much? That would be a perfect C. Is that what you did? To a D, suspended 2nd, because that E, that 2nd into the D is suspended from the C before, and then eventually will resolve itself into the actual D, which is funny because if I have this chord as the first chord of my progression, most likely in a guitar chart it'll be labeled C suspended. Oh, I'm sorry, not that one, right? Not that one. The D. If I have this chord as the first chord of my progression, right? It'll most likely in a guitar chart be labeled a D suspended 4, which is funny because it wasn't suspended over from another chord. It was just sort of starting there. But because it doesn't have a third in it, it's a suspended. And that's why there's really only suspended seconds and suspended fourths, because those are the notes on either side of the third that'll eventually get us down to the third. There's a lot of theory in there, man, but it, you know, it starts to really make sense, you know, after a little while. I mean, to get away from the suspendeds, the adds are easy. C add 9. All right, just play a regular C chord and add your 9 or add your 2. You know, same with a 4. You know, okay, cool.